Well, hello, everybody. I'm Bob Meyers at the Press Foundation. This is for our series called How I Got the Story. We are talking today with Joseph Morton, who is the Washington correspondent and bureau chief for the Omaha World-Herald. For this story, we could actually call it How I Got the Second Day Story, because what Joe and his colleagues accomplished was to take an international story and localize it for their readers, I think, in a very effective way. I think it's something we'll be seeing a lot more of as there are fewer national correspondents around the country or around the world who can cover this, and more people who rely on skilled professionals in Washington. So to set this up, at the beginning of August, the New York Times and a number of other news organizations did a story based on documents provided by Wikileaks, an online organization. The story broke over a weekend, and by Monday, Joe, you came into work, saw the Wikileaks story. It seemingly had nothing to do with Omaha or Nebraska, but you managed to turn it into something that did. Walk us through that process.
Sure. We focused quickly on this angle of civilian casualties and how that was impacting the war effort in Afghanistan. And the editors there decided that they wanted that story on Monday to be written by our military affairs reporter in Omaha, but that I could supplement it with some coverage from Washington. And we decided a couple good people to talk to out here for me, one of which was former Senator Bob Kerrey from Nebraska, who had written in the past about being sort of haunted by this attack on a village by his squad during the Vietnam War, where a number of civilians were killed.
When he was an officer.
That's
right,
correct.
In the Army. Okay.
And so I arranged to do the interview with Senator Kerrey and talk to him about the struggles of being, in the field in a war like this, where sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish between civilians and the enemy, and how that's a challenge for the soldiers on the front lines. That sort of worked with what our military affairs reporter Matthew Hansen was doing back in Omaha to talk to the local Afghan studies experts about this dynamic of civilian casualties in Afghanistan and how that was playing over there, and we sort of wrapped it all together into one big story that Monday.
Was the Kerrey interview in person or on the phone?
We did it by phone. He's the president of the New School up in New York, so he's not actually in Washington, but because I've talked to him for a number of stories here, so I sort of have contacts up there, to get him on the phone. So
now you mentioned a Muslim center in Omaha at the university.
There's the Afghan Studies Center, yes. At the University of Nebraska, Omaha, yes.
Okay. Has that been around for a while?
Yes, and Matthew has done a lot of stuff with them and written about Afghanistan. So he is very tapped into that resource back in Omaha for us.
Let me take that experience and turn it around. Do you try to find the Nebraska angle in everything?
I wouldn't say everything. I mean, there are so many stories, coming out of Washington that are national, and if it's a story that has a big impact on, I don't know, seaports or something, then Nebraska probably doesn't have a big piece of that. But certainly anything that happens, that sort of captures people's imagination. I mean, we're always looking for angles, certainly on anything coming out of Washington, and anything the federal government does, just about is going to impact our readers. So,
you had a second day story, or a follow-up story that you wrote, and it had a lot of new information. Tell us about that.
Well, originally on Monday, we had talked about various people out here who would be good for me to talk to. One of those was Senator Ben Nelson, who's a senior member. He's the senator from Nebraska and a senior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. So I had actually hoped to talk to him that Monday. His schedule didn't allow that, but I was able to get a sit-down interview with him Tuesday morning, to talk through this in his office on Capitol Hill, and he was somewhat surprisingly, he took a very strong line in terms of the people who were doing the leaking. He said that they were traitors who should be tried for treason, which was stronger than what a lot of other people were saying. So we thought that was very interesting, and that was sort of the headline on that next day's story.
It's a good headline.
It advanced it. And of course, I also talked to our other senators. I mean, that's a big part of life as a regional in D.C. is kind of chasing the delegation and getting their thoughts on everything under the sun. So I was able to also, talk to the other senators and get their thoughts on the story.
How hard is it to be a regional reporter in Washington?
Oh, there's certainly some unique challenges, and people joke about how do you get a scoop at the New York Times? You answer the phone, and it's a little bit different when you work for the Omaha World-Herald, and you're trying to get people to return your calls. But I think the more time you spend here, you build up your contacts list, and you can work with associations like the Regional Reporters Association to try and get some of that access, to the policymakers, and and you learn over time how to kind of dig out the information and find it, even if maybe the main press secretary isn't going to call you back right away, but somebody else in that office who can kind of direct you to where the information you're looking for is.
The editor of your paper, Mike Riley, wrote a very nice editorial about sort of how you guys put together that particular story. Does that happen a lot, where the guys in the glass houses pay attention to what you're doing in the field?
He does this column fairly regularly, talking about something in the paper. That I think was prompted by CJR did a story.
Columbia Journalism Review
did a story on our stories, and so I think he wanted to point that out to readers a little bit and just talk about how we got the story. I think so often people don't understand how things work at the newspaper. They just kind of see the final product. So I think it's good that he lays that out for our readers sometimes, so they know how things
Did Columbia Journalism Review contact you before they wrote, or how did they find out about this?
Yes, they did actually. They talked to Mike and Matthew back in Omaha, and they called me as well.
Good.
When they wrote that up. So.
Any more scoops coming out that we promise not to tell anyone?
You won't tell anyone?
I promise. I promise.
We're always working on scoops. At the moment, I'm trying to do something on the calls for repealing birthright citizenship. It's the big story I'm working on for this week. But keep reading.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks a lot for joining us, and congratulations.
All right, thanks a lot.
See you later.